Think about where this steak came from. I was actually at a steakhouse in Vegas with sad pictures of cows on the wall. I don't know why they did it. And out of the speakers at some point, I swear I thought I heard like animals screaming, like they were piping it in. And so this what Zizek is saying is like this wealth, to be truly wealthy in a world where so many people are starving, where right now there's a refugee crisis. We have the largest refugee crisis in the world, the largest groups of people being displaced since World War II, that to be wealthy and to be in this situation is innately violent, in the sense that you have to ignore the suffering around you if you're going to have tons of dough. So how do you wake up in the midst of having all this? Isn't there something to be said for what Gandhi did? Just drop it, man. Let it go. Just drop it.
I think it would be both overly idealistic, and oppressive to say that that's how people have to live. We have all these possibilities, and to come in as a human being, you have this mysterious palette of possibilities, and some have gifts to be artists, and some will be successful and they'll get a bunch of money being artists. Some have an economic gift. I have a friend who is, I think it would be both overly idealistic, and oppressive to say that that's how people have to live. We have all these possibilities, and to come in as a human being, you have this mysterious palette of possibilities, and some have gifts to be artists, and some will be successful and they'll get a bunch of money being artists. Some have an economic gift. I have a friend who's amazingly good with numbers and can remember, and he happens to be a gifted financial person. He's not exploitive at all. He owns property and helps other people, but it's just he had that gift. And he likes doing it, and so forth. We have all these kinds of gifts. And you say, okay, well, the only thing a human being should be is to give away as much as they can because other people are hungry, and so forth, and we should all live baseline really, really simply. That would be a kind of dull world, I think. I think there is something, Dalai Lama says, middle path is his language for it. I think that there's a possibility of having a relationship with money that's wise, in which you use it both to care for yourself and your family or your business, but also you use it to care for the earth and to serve. There's a relationship to wealth that's full of greed and hatred and exploitation. It makes you unhappy and makes the world a worse place. There's a relationship, just because the Buddha left the dancing into the palace and so forth, doesn't mean we shouldn't have music and dancing. I would be really sad for a world without music and dancing. There are monks and nuns who've chosen to live really simply, and I did that in the monastery. It was beautiful to live that silent life without all of that. Absolutely, and you really learn a lot, and you can live in this exquisite, vast, beautiful, open place. It's not always that way. Sometimes you don't like the monk in the hut next to you, and you get in conflict with him. Monasteries are not all that peaceful, but you can. But I don't want to take spirituality, and it would be another oppression, like you talked about, Pete, of your childhood religion giving you a sense of sin or something, to say money is bad or commerce is bad or some other creative arts are bad. They're not. They can be done in ways that are wise and playful and joyful. And joy, the fact that someone else is suffering, it doesn't mean you have to be despondent all the time. That's not helping that person in that village or in that refugee camp. I see the Dalai Lama, and people go to hear him laugh as much as anything. And I think they do because they realize that he carries the weight of all the tragedy of Tibet, but that it's not the end of the story, that his spirit is still free anyway, and that he can be joyful and laugh. And as he said, they've taken so much, they've burned our temples and stolen holy books and taken our opportunity to keep our culture alive in these different ways. Why should I let them take my happiness? That there's a certain way in which our spirit is free, and then we can play in this world and do beautiful things with it. And it depends what palette you pick. How's that?
That's good. You know what's weird?
So you can make a little money on your podcast, just not too much, and you have to give half of it away to refugees. And
No.
Sorry,
I'm going
you
to
asked.
be auditing your tax returns to make sure you've done your part.
But something that I don't think people talk about is the fact that there is sometimes money in luxury. Let's just say having more than you need, not necessarily living paycheck to paycheck, does enable you to actually have less concern. So I don't think about, I don't consider myself wealthy, but I don't think about money as much as I did when I was broke.
You just have other concerns, and it's true. If you don't have food, shelter, and financial security, you worry about that all the time. And this is a very serious and real comment about our human. But then the happiness studies show that if you have a decent level of money, which is, I forget what standard they put for a family, it was $75,000 a year, which is above our national average a little bit. Then you stop thinking about money, and then people don't get happier between 75,000 and 7.5 billion or something.
Wow.
That part doesn't affect you. Yes, you're not worried then. You know that your rent will be paid, that your kids will have clothes, that the things that matter to you are covered. And after that, happiness is not really affected very much by how much more money you have.
Right. I will say, and I don't really like talking about this stuff, but I have a business manager that pays my bills, and then I have an assistant that dropped my laundry off today. You know what I mean? So, like, what did I do today? I meditated. You know what I mean? Because I didn't have to pay my bills or do my laundry.
So is it a bad thing, or are you giving your assistant a job?
I'm saying it's a good thing.
He's got a job.
Right.
You get to meditate part of the time and also do the creative work that you do, that kind of kooky creative work that takes meditative time. And your assistant has a job and would probably be very grateful for that job.
So does my business manager.
If you treat them well.
I agree. I don't hear too many people talking about the truth. When I hear that Richard Gere is a Buddhist, I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you have a dope sand sculpture room that's painted a clay gray and it's incense and it's probably transcendent and wonderful. You know what I mean? I do think that that's something that I don't hear too many people discussing.
Oh yeah, you're saying sort of like, okay, well, like here's Richard Gere, the eminent Buddhist who's got some kind of like, probably has like somewhere in his house an envelope filled with like the Buddha's hair or something, and here he's like he's got access to. I bet Richard Gere has the Dalai. I bet he can text the Dalai Lama. I bet Richard Gere can.
I bet he can.
I can send emoticons to the Dalai Lama.
Right, sure.
That's right.
So
it's always just those
sad one,
praying.
right? Or one of those little ones with your hands together.
Yeah, he could send the hand emoticon to
and
the Dalai Lama.
And then the Dalai Lama sends back one with his hands together and a little smiley one saying it's okay.
That's right. And
so
no, please.
So is that a good deal that you have access to the Dalai Lama?
But here's really,
is it fair?
It's like he's saying this is like doping in sports. It's like it's not fair in baseball if somebody starts blasting with testosterone. They have an unfair advantage over the rest of us.
Or you're just the Yankees and you have the money to buy the best players. I'm saying I'm a pretty spiritual person as long as every single one of my needs is being met. Oh. That's really what I'm saying.
That's part of our task. The thing is that they won't always be met. For example, and I say that when people come and meditate and they go through hard stuff, and their body is hurting, and they say, "Why can't I move and just make it easier?" I say, "You can move. You don't have to make it hard, but once in a while, it's actually all right actually useful to sit when your body's hurting or when you feel like you're going to die of loneliness or guilt or grief or all this stuff that you don't usually let yourself look at. Because sometime in your life, you're going to be in a hospital either sitting at the bedside of somebody who's dying or going through this stuff, or you're going to be going through it. And if you don't know how to handle that part as well, you're up the creek, really. If you want to take the curriculum and have the 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows of a human incarnation and do something beautiful with it, you actually need to somehow be able to bear it and stand it and open that window of the mind and heart. And then you have some choices. Without it, then you become frightened. I don't have enough money. But if you realize, okay, I can live simply. If I lose the money, I have other ways to do that. Then you're not living in that body of fear that restrains you. So, yeah, of course, it's nice to have things easier. We want that as human beings. It won't always be that way. It's guaranteed. There's going to be some moment where it's not what you want. And then how do you live? You'll have plenty of opportunity to practice with it, which is why it's actually helpful to have some inner training or some inner learning of how to be present for the whole catastrophe.
I have a question for you, Jack. I think part of my problem is I take things personally. So when I have some sort of spiritual achievement, I'm like, oh, I'm cool. I'm like a good meditator.
Mm-hmm.
And then I always want other meditators, people. It's very interesting to me that you're saying that you've done the monk thing or lived in a meditative society sort of thing. I want to hear the superhero stories. I want you to tell me that you've left your body and
I
seen
have.
this. Well, that's what I'm
Then
saying.
I came back, right? And then there it wasn't the same old guy. That's the problem. Leaving wasn't the hard part. It was coming back. It's like waking from the dream. Let's see. Now I have to brush my teeth. Now I have to pee. Now I have to go deal with my relationship. Now I have to talk to my business manager, which I don't have, but I should very well have.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
a good idea.
It's nice to not have to worry about your rent.
But yeah. I mean,
Being
in
sent.
that way, I did this book a while ago that the title was After the Ecstasy, the Laundry, in which the point of it, in some way, was to say that there is no enlightened retirement. People think, okay, I'm going to get to this great state. Everything's open. My heart's open. My mind is so peaceful. It's open. And now I got it, and I can hold it, and I can just keep it. And you can't hold on to anything. And even the Buddha and Jesus, because you were bringing them up and so forth, they had backaches and physical problems, the Buddha did, and then he had all these monks that were misbehaving and they wouldn't listen to him. And he said, listen, I'm the Buddha. And they said, yeah, but they were so, he was so frustrated with them in some way. They were so recalcitrant that finally he just threw his hands up and said, I'm going to go and live in the woods with the animals. They're a lot easier to live with than you monks. And spent a year kind of away, removing himself from all these people that were fighting. And we don't have to ask what happened to Jesus.
Right.
But even before that, when Buddha and Jesus went home, they had trouble with their families. Just in case anybody listening is having those troubles, there's a long lineage of this. So this is called human incarnation in some way. And how do we live in a way that we take this mystery of being a human being, we don't forget the mystery. We don't get lost in the sort of everydayness so much that we've forgotten it. And then we make it a work of art, But it's not going to be always open. It's going to be up and down and hot and cold and praise and blame and gain and loss and fame and disrepute. That's the way
He looked at you for
it's woven.
And he looked at me for
Well,
fame.
you don't like the disrepute part? You like the fame part. He gets the disrepute.
I'm the fame. You're the disrepute.
There we
Not
go.
according to how he looked.
That's how and so what are you going to do with it? This is what incarnation is woven with, right? And you can say, all right, I'm going to try and only have pleasure and no pain, and I'm going to have gain and no loss, and I'm going to have birth and no death. I don't know what planet you think you're on, So, and as a culture, we try, our security devices, and they would try to make everything really secure. Helen Keller said at one point, security is mostly a superstition. It does not exist in nature, nor do children on the whole experience it. She knew what she was talking about. Avoiding danger is no safer in the long run than outright exposure. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing. And she says that in some way really as an invitation to us, because this is the life that we've been born into. And if we take the small self, we get frightened. But if we realize we're part of something so much bigger, so magnificent, the life force that's in you brought you to birth and has kept you breathing, and your heart's pumping, your liver's working, and all these, you get 100 billion new blood cells a day, reborn in your body, and you don't even have to do anything. It's all happening. And you get to be the artist with it. And that's a beautiful thing. So spiritual life for me is not either about some great enlightened state or something that you fix and now I've got it, enlightened retirement. It's more like surfing. Waves are up, surf's up. Yeah, far out. Let's go out and ride the waves. And
then they go away.
They go away. They
Sometimes.
get flat, and so forth. Okay, this isn't a great surfing day. Or you take a really bad spill, and that's all right. But it's not self-improvement. It's really much more about mystery and love, and consciousness itself? Can we awaken and see the beauty in the eyes of the people around us and the lavender color in the puddles at sunset, and taste, what is it like to eat a kiwi? We didn't have kiwis when I was growing up. They didn't ship those things from wherever they grew them. Now they grow them, I'm sure, in California. I remember going to Asia and having my first taste of mangosteen or rambutan, or these fruits that you don't get here, or durian. And you know what it's like to eat a new fruit? You're like a kid again. Look at the color of this, and wow, this whole other taste. And no one can tell you what an apple tastes like. They can say it's sweet, it's fruity. No one can tell you until you taste it. And then you go, wow. And every day is like that. Every day saying, hey, here's a new fruit, every new moment of a new day that nobody in the entire galaxy has ever experienced before. And you get to bring beginner's mind to the table if you want, somehow.
I want a durian.
I think I had
Durian ice cream. It's very good
bet it's
stuff.
good.
Yeah.
But you know
Smells
the
bad, but it tastes great. That's like life, right?
durian. That's what I heard. It smells
Durian.
bad. The thing about what you're saying is where my mind will go the next time I'm eating a fruit is, you better enjoy this fruit, man. And then just the very act of trying to enjoy it, I won't enjoy it. It's, the effort, like what you're saying. Here we are, this insane pulsation of cells and atoms that are perfectly harmonized to create a form that somehow we managed to believe is us. It's all effortless. But the moment you apply the slightest effort to these things, it's all gone. It runs away. It's like, going in the woods and making loud noises while you're trying to hunt. It just runs. So I might think, I'm going to really enjoy this. This is it. I'm going to eat this durian fruit like I'm Deepak Chopra. But it's just...
That's funny. I'm the opposite. I actually find, like, when I'm meditating, I love my mantra, but at the same time, I find it just as helpful to go be right here while I'm doing it. Just reminding myself what I'm doing. And if I say I'm going to
Well, you're clearly more spiritual than Duncan.
No. I'm interested in why it's the
No,
opposite
he's
with
saying
me.
something actually very important. And what you're describing, Duncan, is what your mind is doing. It's a thought stream. So there you are with the mango or the mangosteen in your hand, and then your mind has a little bit of spiritual advice for you. You should be here fully enjoying this. And then another part says, shut the fuck up. I don't want to hear you telling me what to do. I just want to enjoy this. And another part says, see, you're just arguing with yourself. And, and all of basically that's a stream of thoughts. And so you can say, oh, that's the mind. Thank you for your opinion. Right. And then you say, now let me hold this mangosteen. What is it like when I open it in my fingers? And it's not that you have to get rid of that or think, oh, I shouldn't have that. Part of really one of the best things about meditation is that you learn not to believe your mind. And so it does those things. That's what minds do. They secrete thoughts, and some of them are cool thoughts, and some of them are stupid thoughts. It's like that cartoon of the car from the New Yorker, of this car driving across the Utah vast, wide desert. And the roadside billboard says, your own tedious thoughts next 200 miles, right? It just does. It prompts a thought, and you can believe it, and then you say, I'm a jerk, or I'm magnificent, I'm a fabulous person, or I'm a horrible person, so forth. It has all those stories about you.
You
and
pointed
say,
to him when
We
you
did.
said fabulous,
We both
and
noticed
me
that.
when you said horrible.
We both noticed that.
I thought I pointed the other way.
I certainly wasn't trying to. You know that.
I know, of course.
That wasn't even in my mind.
But so to know, I mean, one of the simplest exercises I do when I teach people is to have them count their thoughts for 60 seconds, and they'll count, 6 thoughts or 12 thoughts or 13 thoughts or something like that, picture and word thoughts. The beautiful thing about it is that they realize that the thoughts are thinking themselves, and that it's possible to become the witnessing of the thoughts. And notice, oh, there's a healthy thought, there's a unhealthy thought, there's one that's kind of destructive, doesn't have a lot of my good interest at heart. That's a conditioned thought of that kind of. And so you don't have to believe your thoughts. And that's tremendously helpful and liberating.
Totally. That's all I had.
Me too.
Totally.
Totally, he says, totally, and then you stop. with that.
Tell me about you leaving your body.
He wants to hear about the mystical stuff.
Yeah, I want to hear trippy
What
stuff.
do you want to hear?
I want to hear about the first time. Could you?
So I'm there.
But Jack,
I am.
before you go,
Yeah, right.
just know that I've been told many of these stories, and I'm not a skeptical person, Duncan. You know that. I'm never convinced. I just don't think the story is told. I've had people tell stories of losing their car keys that have more wonder in them.
That sounds very good to me. I mean, car keys it's amazing because, car keys, now your car actually waits for you and it opens itself. I mean, that's, if you were like some shaman coming out of Africa or the Amazon or Siberia or something, and you'd watch somebody walk up to their car and it would light up and say, dude, this guy's got some real chops as a shaman. So I'm all right with you on the car keys. They're very cool.
I don't mean to put a burden on you to tell like a charismatic story. I just want to believe so bad.
Just one story.
Please.
Just
Please.
Believe. Yeah. Well, nobody can help anybody believe. You have to find your own thing, of course. But I will tell you this. So there I am, and this is just a common thing. I'm meditating away. I'm in this monastery in my early years as a monk.
How long had you been meditating?
Well, I was on a year-long silent retreat. And so that's a long-ass retreat.
Wow.
I know that's true.
That's not a retreat. That was just...
That's right. That's like a prison sentence or something. Anyway, somebody said, yeah, I'm locked in a phone booth with a lunatic, basically. It was this little hut, right? But anyway, and the instructions were to sit for an hour and then walk for an hour and sit for an hour, kind of alternately being mindful of what was happening. And I got very tired because they said, this particular teacher I was with said, try to cut back on your sleep. So the afternoon, I'm like sitting there and very sleepy and tired. And I say, all right, I'm going to let myself lie down and sleep, but only for 15 or 20 minutes because I'm supposed to be doing this meditation stuff and thinking that I'm going to get enlightened, which was, I was young and naive. And that's how you thought about things at that time. And so I lay down, and 15 minutes passed, and I lay down on a hard wooden floor. I thought, well, I won't sleep too long that way. I woke up, and I started to do my walking meditation. There was a little, veranda on the outside of this hut. And I walked out, and I walked on the veranda, and then I looked over, and I could see in the distance my teacher and some other people at the other end of the campus and so forth. I walked back, turned around, and as I walked back into my hut, I was shocked. There was this person sleeping there. I said, oh, how's that? That's really weird. And then I walked closer. I said, oh, it's me. How did that happen? I was so intent on getting up. My body was exhausted, just didn't want to get up. But I said, I'm going to get up. And I did. And I oh my gosh, this is what they call an out-of-the-body experience. How cool. So I walked back outside, and I looked around, I walked back in.
Oh,
and then I came very close, and I kind of peered down at my body. And then I felt myself tumble back into my body. And then my eyes opened. I thought, oh, here I am, lying on the floor.
Wow.
So you asked for a first story.
And it's beautiful. Now,
it's not that uncommon. People in a car accident report floating above their body. People in surgery, it's a relatively common thing for people when their lives are in danger in certain ways to leave their body and float out and feel that consciousness isn't limited by their body. So it's a relatively common thing. But the beautiful thing was that this wasn't an emergency. And then I realized, you can train yourself to do this.
And have you?
I've repeated it, yeah.
Are you at a point where you feel like you could do it if you wanted to?
Yeah.
Have you ever, now, I do believe you, for what that's worth. I'm not saying that should mean anything to you. I think that's a lovely story. And I'm not usually burdened too much by this. I'm okay with paradox, and I'm okay with things that are trans-rational beyond our reason.
I mean, that's just a tiny story, but you asked for a beginning.
I would love some more.
Anyway, keep going.
My question for you is, have you ever wanted to put a playing card on your desk and not know what that card is, and then try and leave your body and see if you could look at it, and then have some sort of objective data?
Yeah, at certain times.
How'd that go?
But this is a really interesting, and it's kind of a little bit paradoxical. When those kind of gates open up, then the kind of clinging materialist thing, it sort of goes away. It's not all that interesting. It's like the sense of wow, amazement, wonder is so much more juicy than whatever's on the playing card. And I don't, I mean, I had a teacher who it was said had all these kind of psychic powers, and Joseph Goldstein, my colleague, and I, and Sharon Salzberg, at one point we said, well, would you show us to this woman? And she said no. And so I'm sorry, I wanted to watch her walk through a wall or materialize it. I've never seen that. I'd love to have seen it.
Right.
But there was some way, I think, in her response, which she was communicating, that's really a dead end. It's really a side thing. Yes, okay, here's Uri Geller, and he can bend a spoon with his mind, and they get all the people in the lab, and he's still bending a spoon, and some scientist is saying, well, maybe he's kind of secretly blowing air over there in a spoon. They can't figure out why or how it's happening, but it does happen,
That happened? There were scientists that watched a man bend a spoon?
Yes. Yeah. But
I don't know. I ran into these when I did that show with Rogan. We got to, there's activist skeptics who are.
Oh, yeah, of course. And I like those guys. They're
I do
good
too. They're cool.
But that's because spirituality isn't about, if you want something amazing, just walk out on the damn street and look around. Everything's amazing. Walt Whitman said, a mouse is miracle enough to stagger sextillions of infidels. The fact that life exists, that,
right.
that little mouse crawls around the corner, and that it has the same nervous system that you do, more or less, with eyes and ears and responds to the world. Where did that come from? Where did there are 1 million species of beetles on the earth. Oh, well, evolution, Darwin says, that's a nice thing to say, but what's making all this display of life?
Because here's the thing, if let's say suddenly some mystical child demonstrated in front of
that they could levitate. There we are. I'm the White House. I'm going to show the White House press corps levitation.
Yes.
Here I am. I'm floating, and everyone goes, "Okay, it really is mystical, right?" And how does he do that? And also, can we weaponize it?
Right.
Would be the next question.
That would be the next question. And then after they figure out how the levitation happens, within 2 months, no one cares. The levitating child is old news. So it's really what you're seeking is novelty. You're seeking the experience of wonder that happens when you realize you're in a bigger universe than you thought you were.
If we could prove that, this is my interest. It goes back to a fear of death, actually. If we could prove that you're leaving your body and that it's not just an imagination of your mind and it's not just you constructing a very vivid dream, then I would go, oh, Jack isn't Jack. Jack is a spirit, just as we've always surmised, as we've always believed. And if I left my body, I know Christ said a faithless generation asks for a sign. I feel that way all the time. I'm like, yeah, you nailed me, Jesus. But the idea of getting out of my body and seeing my body and going, oh, this is me and there's that, and I'm seeing this and I'm experiencing this, means that when that thing dies, who cares?
But maybe the thing that pops out of your body dies too.
Yeah, I guess.
That's a problem. Maybe that thing dies too. You get out of this shell. Maybe the thing that gets out of the shell is also impermanent. And if that thing has another thing that pops out of its shell, maybe that thing dies too. It's just this, infinite change. It's like even coming out of your body doesn't mean that everything isn't going to stop or end, or the universe isn't going to hit some zero state. There's no escape from death. Even if there's an escape from physical death, I imagine no matter what, we're all going to face some oblivion. Isn't that the idea? Isn't that the idea that that it already is oblivion?
Well, these are in some ways also metaphysical questions, which both existence and time are all created together with consciousness. And does it mean that consciousness is eternal? Is it always going to be here? Is the universe created out of consciousness? I think so, but we'll have to wait and see. These kind of questions, they're very compelling in a certain way in our minds. They were not actually very much of interest to the Buddha. He said, I'm not actually interested in having you get a new set of beliefs. All that stuff came later about past and future lives and stuff. That was part of the common belief of India, and he worked with it. But he said, I'm not interested in giving you a new set of beliefs. I'm more interested in your looking at the circumstances of human life, which you have. For whatever reason, you got in there as Duncan and Pete and Jack and whatever. Here we are. And you can do this in a way that creates pain and suffering for yourself and others, that creates more entanglement and more loss and more difficulty, in which case it's a bad or an unhealthy or an unfortunate way to use it. Or you can take this very same human life and understanding the laws that govern it, see what brings joy, what brings ease, what brings graciousness and care to yourself and others. And in it, there will come to you a sense of freedom right where you are, not in the next life, not in by some belief, but in the very day that you're living with the very people that you are, you can actually be free. You can be free to love. You can be free to create. You can be free to serve someone else. You can be free to care for yourself because they're not really separate in some way. And this is possible for you. And that, he said, I only teach this. I only teach what's practical for human beings to discover, to awaken and discover that there's a freedom that is your birthright. And the rest, he said, metaphysics was not really of much interest to him.
I mean, I'd love to fly to the moon, is all I'm saying.
You get bored of the moon.
Well, and then Thomas Merton, the Christian mystic, says, of what avail is it to fly to the moon if we can't cross the abyss that separates us from ourselves, if we can't really know who we are? We can go outwardly places, and you all have. I'm sure you've traveled to wildly cool places, as I have in great things. But there's this other journey of really awakening to who you are, to this mystery of consciousness, of awareness itself. What Ram Dass calls loving awareness. Look at you, say, you are loving awareness. You are this awareness itself. You are love itself. I don't think so. Well, that's a thought. Maybe you are loving awareness. Maybe that was what was born in you, spirit.
One more body story.
Yeah, please. And I want one little levitation. It doesn't have to be very far. Just a couple inches would be enough.
No, just because they're cool.
Well, you know that story Terence McKenna says? It's a story about a guy who went and meditated in the woods until he could walk across water. He meditated in the woods. Have you ever heard that story, Jack?
I don't know. Tell me.
He meditated in the woods for years and years and years until he gained the ability to walk across water, and he went back to his master and said, look what I've done. And he shows him. He walks across water, and his master says, the ferry costs a nickel. You didn't need to go in the woods for years and years. What are you doing?
That's right. That's it.
Still, cool story.
Yeah.
But see, Pete wants to watch him walk across water just one time.
I just...
And then, then you say you won't be afraid of death. But I think you will anyway. I mean, because I notice in myself, we do have these openings to mystery and that thing that Alice Walker wrote about. We have our own experiences of oneness and of emptiness and of nothingness and of dream and coming back and so forth. And part of us feels like we're connected with eternity, and another part is afraid. And that's part of being human. I think that's part of having a body. The body, I came back from the monastery after I'd been there for some years, and I started to drive again. And I was driving down the freeway, and the truck in front of me blew a tire, and one of the big parts of the tire came off, and the other cars were swerving and almost crashing because there's this big pieces of black rubber, on the highway smashing into one car and things like that. And I thought, I was just a few cars back, that we were all going to crash and I was going to die. My mind was very calm because I'd been doing all this meditation, so peaceful, equanimity, just, oh, wow, maybe this is going to be it. Maybe I'll die. My body grabbed the steering wheel, wrenched it over. All this adrenaline came in. I want to live. I got to steer myself through it. And it's almost like there are different parts of us. One part that says, oh, sure, eternity. Yeah. Another says, not yet, baby. We're still. And so you get to see all of that. And spiritual life isn't somehow to get from one to the other, but to realize that it's all here, that it's who we are actually, and that we are both timeless beings. And you want to remember that. Without that, your life somehow gets lost down the rabbit hole of everything being very materialistic and so forth. But at the same time, in remembering it, you also then come back and tend your garden and how you drive and how you talk to people and what seeds you plant of beauty on this earth through your art or through your work or your business or something. They need to be respected equally much. So you have a foot in eternity and a foot in the human world. And that's the way you move.
Nice.
Awesome.
Call this episode Not Yet, Baby.
Not yet, baby. That's right. That's right.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Jack Kornfield Heart Wisdom Hour. We are delighted to share with you Jack's innate common sense and his clear, open heart. In order to continue presenting these podcasts, we need your support. Please go to mindpodnetwork.com/Jack and you can donate there, or you can go through our Amazon or Audible affiliate links. And that's another great way to support the podcast. Thank you for your generous attention.
So tonight I want to talk about one aspect of the mystery of being a human being, of human incarnation, what is called karma vipaka in Sanskrit, and has just become the kind of borrowed English word karma. And I want to do it because over the last weeks when I have been teaching, I've done other kinds of more contemporary talks about mindfulness and things in the world, and it seems useful periodically to hold up some of the traditional teachings in a way that I think serve people. I want to start with a poem. I'd read a poem about sleeplessness some weeks ago, and this is a different one related to the same topic, by one of my favorite poets, Ellen Bass, called Insomnia, particularly for those of you who know that state. All over the world, people can't sleep. In different time zones, they are lying awake, bodies still, minds trudging along like child laborers. They worry about bills. They worry whether the shoes they just bought are really too small. One's husband's died. Her son left for college, and she doesn't know how to program the VCR. Another was beaten by her husband. One is planning a getaway. One holding stolen goods. One's on the plaid couch in ICU. His daughter, it turned out, actually does have a tumor, even though the doctor said they'd do the MRI just to rule it out. The woman on the other couch is snoring, which is strangely soothing, evidence that people do sleep. Some are lying on charisma sheets, some in hammocks, some in jail, some under bridges. One is at the North Pole studying the impact of pollution. A man in Massachusetts thinks about a lover he once had in Dar es Salaam and the jasmine blossoms she strung along the shaft of a silver pin fastened in her hair at night. Coincidentally, the lover, now in Rome, remembers looking out the window over the sink when she was washing dishes and seeing him reading in the lawn chair, and she thought how, perhaps for the first time, she wasn't lonely. They're all up. Some are too cold, some too hot, some hungry, some in pain. Some are in hotels listening to people having sex in the next room. Some are crying. One, the cat woke up and now she's worried about the rash she noticed in the evening and wonders if her daughter, who's afraid to swim, should be pushed. Some get up, others stay in bed. They eat Oreos or drink wine, or both. Many read. A few make Halloween costumes. Some check their email. They try sleep tapes, hypnosis, drugs. They listen to their clocks tick smartly as a woman in high heels. Those who can cling to their mates, an ear pressed to those neighboring lungs like a stethoscope, hoping to catch a ride on the steady sleep breath of the other, to be carried like a seed on the body of the one who is able. Right now in Japan, dawn is coming, and everyone who's been up all night is relieved. They can stop trying. In Guatemala, though, the insomniacs are just getting started and have the whole night ahead of them. It's like a wave at the baseball stadium, hands around the world. So here's a prayer for the wakeful, the souls who can't rest. As you lie with eyes open or closed, may something comfort you. A mockingbird, a breeze, the smell of crushed mint, Chopin's nocturnes, your child's birth, a kiss, or even me, awake at 3 a.m. in my chilly kitchen with my coat over my nightgown, thinking of you. So here we are in this human condition that she gives her poetic voice to, with longing and beauty and love and loss and possibility and all that's so mysterious. And then you say, well, how do I navigate through this complicated life that I've been given? And one of the most important understandings for navigating is the understanding of karma, or karma vipaka. Without it, you're like a boat without a rudder. You kind of get pushed and drifted around without this understanding. And I remember the first visit that the Dalai Lama had to America, it was back in the 70s. And in his first American trip, he was invited to give a lecture at Harvard Divinity School. And because he was at Harvard, and we were on this great big auditorium, old auditorium at Harvard, I think because he was at Harvard, it was Harvard, right? He decided to give this long, impossibly difficult to understand arcane lecture from the Madhyamaka teachings of the Geshe PhD philosophical training that he'd had for an hour and a half. All these intricate things about the nature of mind and emptiness and shunyata and so forth that almost nobody understood. It was like, okay, you guys have some knowledge here. Let me try this out on you. See how you like that. You know, it's Harvard. And then when he finished, you know, and it was beautiful. It was like this kind of amazing piece of music and art and deep, deep kind of contemplative philosophy. Then he said, well, maybe you didn't understand this so well. And he laughed as he did. He said, no matter. He said, maybe, anyway, not so important. Just maybe you study karma. And then he laughed. And that was kind of the end of it. Okay. But how do we study karma? How do we understand it? You know, it's become so much a part of our lexicon that you hear it, I heard it on the radio, you know, come in to buy your car at this particular car dealer in the East Bay because we've got great sales and it's, you know, whatever, John, somebody's car. It's his karma to sell you the best car at the lowest price, and it's your karma to come in and get such a good car, you know. Or this ad that I saw, quite genuine, in the Bay Guardian that said, want to be rich, you know, those kind of ads. Fabulously wealthy, really rich. Let's face it, the only way to fabulous wealth is to be born into it. Well, you've blown it this time around, but now there's a way. The reincarnation connection next lifetime guarantee. Just send $25 to the address below. for with a guaranteed check certificate. And you can also check the box if you want royalty, sports, fame. We promise to deliver or your money back. Right? So it's become part of our culture in some way to use the word. And there's an amazing Buddhist text called the Avatamsaka Sutra in 25 volumes that describes all the possible experiences of consciousness in different universes, not just this universe, but universes made of perfume and universes made of fire, which you haven't noticed a lot of galaxies have that. Universes made of stone, universes made of light, all different kinds of universes. They all have names and they all have Buddhas in them. And the teachings in all these universes are the same. That if you plant a mango seed, you get a mango tree. You don't get an apple tree. And that the laws that govern creation itself is that there is a pattern of cause and effect. That things arise due to causes. So this is a passage of the Buddha speaking. He said, if a man plays upon a lute, the musical notes do not appear from a storehouse of hidden notes, and when he stops, they do not return to any place else. They arise from certain conditions, the body of the lute, the strings, the training and exertion of the player, and then when those causes and conditions change, they cease, leaving no trace. In the same way, the elements of being, physical and mental, arise according to conditions and then cease and become non-existent. So he's really describing the way, the patterns that experience happen. If you plant a mango seed, you get a mango tree. If you take a acorn, you get in that acorn is all the oak trees that ever were, and you plant that little thing and then it becomes a seedling and a sapling and a great oak tree, and then there's another acorn. Well, are they the same or different? They're actually the continuation of the oak tree pattern. You can't even say which is the real oak, can you? It's all this pattern in form and consciousness. Zen poem. Break open a cherry tree and there are no flowers, but the spring breeze brings forth a myriad of blossoms. So things arise due to the patterns and the causes and conditions. Now all this sounds sort of theoretical. We'll get down to it, I promise. Right? We don't see these patterns. We tend to live inside them. I was visiting my grandmother at her old assisted living place, and she was about 90. And I noticed when I would go and spend time with her that down in the lobby where people would gather to play cards or talk or watch TV and so forth, that there were two distinct groups of people. There were the people who had basically cheerful temperaments, and they'd sit around and they'd watch TV or they'd talk a little or they'd sit quietly. They'd enjoy one another, enjoy the day. And then there were the other group that my grandmother was a part of, who were the professional complainers. Did you taste what they served us for food for lunch today? Oh my God, yes, and the portions were so small, that kind of thing, right? And the postman, he was supposed to bring, but I haven't heard anything. Do you hear anything from your family? They never write. And it was just on and on and on. And you could kind of see the patterns that had developed over a lifetime manifesting themselves in the minds of those people. So we're talking about conditioning here, and the way, the patterns that repeat themselves in your psyche and in your mind. And then they form your personality. Oh dear, right? Like my grandmother. In fact, somebody asked the Lama Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, if there's no solid self in Buddhism, what is it that's reborn? Especially as a Tibetan Lama that he was. And he said, I'm sorry to say, your bad habits. or your good habits, whatever. But these patterns become our way. And you can notice the patterns of judgment or the patterns of attention or the patterns of love or the patterns of fear, or, the patterns of unworthiness or the patterns of care, and all those are there. And they're very powerful. And when you start to meditate, it's like you look in the mirror and you see these patterns. And most often people want to get rid of their personality. Couldn't I get a better personality and a better body while I'm at it? But doesn't work that way. You can go to therapy and you can get some facelift or whatever, work out at the gym. But basically you have a body and you have a personality. And they're kind of granted to you in this incarnation, and you can work with them, but you have a temperament too. Gandhi said, I have only 3 enemies. The first and most easily influenced is the entire British Empire, right? The second, far more difficult, are the Indian people. And if you've traveled in India, you would understand just what he's saying, right? He said, but my most formidable opponent is a man named Mohandas K. Gandhi. With him, I seem to have very little influence. So you start to pay attention and you see the patterns and also how powerful they are. And underneath these patterns are the instinctive forces of life, of survival, of need, of desire, of fear, of longing, of creativity, of love, of connection, that keep life going itself. We're not talking about small things here. The Buddha said, which do you think is more, the water in the 4 great oceans, or the tears that you shed over many lifetimes, if you believe in that lifetime stuff, from the loss of loved ones, from the separation of things that mattered to you, from the death of people around you? More are the tears, and more are the tears you shed than the waters in the 4 great oceans. Or if you want to just look in a kind of more basic level at the power of these forces, turn on the news. War, racism, just insane, crazy. Environmental destruction based on the forces of desire and greed or fear of another, or clinging or hatred. They're incredibly powerful forces, and they're part of the dance of human incarnation, and you have to learn to deal with them because they're here and they're in you. They're in life. So this is a serious conversation in a way. You are born into the human realm, and how are you going to navigate it? Now, it's said that there are 4 kinds of karma, that is, patterns that have different levels of intensity. And they show themselves especially when you are near death. And this is all kind of interesting. Maybe I'll talk about it a little bit, about death and so forth. But the first is called weighty karma. And it's 2 sides. In one way, if you killed somebody, for example, it weighs on your soul or your spirit. And at the time of death, you remember that. And it affects what happens if you believe in more than one incarnation, which is true, but you'll wait and see. You see for yourself. But also, I've talked about a friend and somebody I admire a lot, who's one of the leaders in restorative justice in this country, a woman named Sujata Baliga, who was born to a family where she was terribly abused and sexually abused and all these things, and she went to Harvard Law School and decided to become a prosecutor and get those guys who were abusing women. But she made herself sick with the rage and anger and pain she carried, and somehow she found her way to listen to the Dalai Lama and left him a note. I need to speak with you. And the next thing she knows, she got a little thing back saying, yes, you have an appointment at Thursday at 4 o'clock to come see His Holiness. So she did, and told her whole story. And he looked at her and he said, so are you finished with the pain of your anger yet? Finished poisoning yourself with it? And she really had to take stock and say yes. And so he taught her loving compassion meditation, forgiveness practice. He sent her to learn meditation. And then he said, you have to work with perpetrators if you're really to free your karma. And she has done. She's done this amazing kind of movement of restorative justice, because everybody almost who's an abuser, if you actually sit with them, was an abused child. They were all abused. They're in this karmic chain of suffering that gets carried on. So Wedi karma, she redeemed her karma in some amazing way. Then there's proximate karma. If it's not the heaviest karma, it's the karma of what's been happening at the time near death. Or if it's not proximate karma, it's habitual karma. What state is your mind habitually in? That will be the vision that you carry. And if it's not habitual, then it's called random karma. That is to say, the image is this that's used in the text. Wedi karma is like if you have a meadow with a number of cows and a bull in it. The gate is open, the bull goes first. Everything follows. But if the bull isn't near the gate, then proximate karma, whatever cow is near the gate, goes first through the gate. And if there's no cow near, then it's whatever cow is the habitual karma, whatever cow is used to going out through the gate. And if there isn't any habitual cow, then it's, anybody's guess, random cows. But what it starts to tell you, it's not that you need to have some kind of schema in this way, but more it starts to tell you about the intensity of the patterns, that there's some patterns that you've made that are so powerful in your life, they rule you, and they rule what will happen. And here I have to pause for a moment to talk about what's mysterious, because I told my teacher Ajahn Chah when I first went to the monastery that I didn't believe in this past and future life stuff. I hadn't had the experiences that I've had since then. I didn't need to hear any of that kind of nonsense, because you can't, how do you know, whatever. And he said, you don't need to believe any of that to find the Dharma of liberation, because you're born and you die every day and every moment. That birth and death happens over and over, and you can watch the patterns of birth and death and see what you're creating moment by moment and see how you live your life. So you can hold it that way, and that's a very wise way to hold it. But at the same time, there's also something pretty mysterious about being a human being. And in the years of meditation and teaching and doing my own deep practice in Asia and various temples and monasteries, and then also studying past life regression and doing that with people, and then studying with shamans and taking these kind of strange, wild shamanic journeys and sacred medicine and so forth. I have whatever experience, I've had all these wild experiences, and some of them sure seem like they explain my life, or I see it with other people, not just within this incarnation, but that there's some repeated pattern that you get born into to learn about or finish or complete. You might think of it that way, that you actually have a task in this incarnation to learn love, or to learn to let go, or to make your peace, as Sujata Baliga had to do somehow with the terrible things that happened to her. That this life that you've been given is a place of learning, and not just a place to get through, or some struggle or grim duty in some fashion. And so what do you do with this? Let's see, a couple of stories, more stories tonight. Black elk, talk about the karma that you make. This great Ogallala Sioux medicine man, the most wonderful one of the century, as he was written about anyway. In Black Elk Speaks, Neihart, the guy who befriended him and wrote his story, tells about Black Elk's final hike up Harney Peak, which is this mountain in the Dakotas. The Sioux holy man explained that when death approaches, a Lakota could climb this mountain to see if the Great Spirit approved of their life. Rain would fall on those who had the Great Spirit's approval. As a young